Hello, and thank you for joining us today for our monthly webinar. I'm Teresa Lyson, a business solutions consultant at NICC. Today's topic is growing leadership at all levels with Dr. Celina Peerman. Great leaders never stop learning, and today's speaker is here to help us take that to the next level. Dr. Celina Peerman has spent her career helping organizations create cultures where learning leads to growth for people, teams, and entire communities. Let's learn something new today with Dr. Celina Peerman. If you have any questions throughout Celina's presentation, please add them to the Q&A or chat box at the bottom of the screen, and we will save time at the end of the webinar to answer those. And with that, I will turn it over to Celina.
Thank you, Teresa. Welcome, everyone. Whether you're here live with us today and taking this time out from all the other things you would have been working on, or you're watching the recording later. This is also part of the investment in you. So whether you are working on your own skill set or you're trying to figure out how to bring other people along, my hope is with this time, you've got some actionable takeaways to think about what's our next step. So I'm going to present a couple of ideas and models to you that can be adapted for your organization or yourself. So today I want you to think about this in three levels. At the organizational level, how are we going to build capacity? What does that actually look like? What kind of scaffolding do we need in order to have people not only move up, but around, right? So that we have managed our talent in a way that prepares them for whatever the next spot is. So we can look at today's topic as an organization and how we manage, right, and develop talent. Second layer to that is at the team, department, or division level. That next layer in the middle of what does it look like on each team? What do I need to do as a leader to grow my next person? Or who's going to step in just so I can take a vacation day? I want you to think about that. So it could be at that level, or our last level is at the individual level. So maybe for you, you want to make your next move. Maybe you want to make a lane change. What are some of the things you can think about in terms of increasing your own leadership learning? So it's a pleasure to spend this time with you today. I have the opportunity through NICC to do this literally every day with companies all over our region. And when we break it down, I want us to think about how do you actually get a leader to develop? Like, what does that look like? So I want to give you some very concrete examples today, not only from our work with area companies, with a little bit of research to make the claims and then some action items, again, at the organizational level, the team level, or at the individual level. So as we take on that conversation, I want you to consider what growing leaders at all levels means to you. What does it mean to grow yourself as a leader, grow your team as a leader, grow your organization? Doesn't mean everybody's in charge, but they can influence from the seat they're in. They, in that moment, as a teller, can take the lead with that client or customer, that in the moment that mechanic is serving an internal customer, he, she, or they can do what they need to do for that person taking a lead on that process or project. So when we talk about growing leaders at all levels, we're really talking about capacity building. What does that look like and how will we approach it? First, what I want you to consider for today is what's our why? What is our business case? Now, there's a lot of stats on here. I could give you pages more, but I want you to at least identify what's your why. Because really, when we have grown leaders, we have a bigger impact. We have a bigger impact on our customers. We have a bigger impact on our communities. And while leadership, effective leadership, has always been an important part of not only our human history, but our organizational history, we know some things today about what lack of leadership development looks like. Here are a few that caught my eye. 61% of managers are not offering enough feedback and coaching to their employees. Why might that be? Number one reason, because we're busy, right? We got all this stuff to do, but here's what we know. If we don't, then we're not ready. If we don't give feedback and take the time for coaching, then we're holding people back. But the reality is we may not have the time or we may not know what words to say. I don't know. How do I grow the next leader? Hopefully today I'll give you a few ideas for that, something to think about as part of your investment. 90% of promoted leaders said that they were unprepared, and 70% said they were surprised at what leadership entailed. Just think about those 2 points for a moment. I don't want an unprepared leader moving in. So a lot of times through NICC, we'll work with companies so the next group's ready. So the emerging leaders that are our next candidate pool when something becomes available, we already have people ready to step in. And they may not have all the stuff yet, but it's sure better than starting at nothing. 70% said they were surprised with what a leadership role entailed. So we've got to really talk about what does this mean here? And you're going to see a tool in just a moment of what do we want in leaders. I thought it was also interesting that 62% of leaders believe they're doing an excellent job of retaining employees, but only 27% of employees agree with this. Why retention? Because if people don't see a pathway, for their future, they'll go somewhere else to find it. Now, there's lots of other reasons why discussing retention is important, but I want to repeat that statement again for you today, and maybe that's a nugget you take with you. When people don't see a pathway and it's important to them, they'll find it somewhere else. So what would happen? I'm like, I'm up for some new challenges. I've been here a little while. I've learned some stuff, but I look at my manager and go, well, they're not going anywhere anytime soon. They're probably around for another 20 years. If I don't know other pathways and no one's talking to me about my pathway here, boy, that ad, that LinkedIn post, that now hiring sign, whatever that is, it's going to look a whole lot more attractive. Meanwhile, 66% of leaders believe their company has a clear pathway for each employee, but only 35% of employees agree with this. So again, it captures that idea. And several studies, up to 63% of employees under the age of 42 do not feel like their employers are fully developing their leadership skills. I can look at that in a couple of ways. A, leaders, let's get on it. And maybe this year it's just one more thing. Next year, it's another thing, because there is a cost to do this. But what I want you to ask yourself is there's also a cost not to do this. What kind of cost do you want? For the rest of you, you're like, yeah, you just described. Other leaders of my organization take a picture of this, and you can share, hey, you know that webinar I went to, right? That we're not doing enough here. Now, you may not be able to do all the things you want, but I want you to consider what's your next move. Because really, for us to get impact, it's leadership plus investment. We have some natural talent. We have some skill sets in our team, but it takes investing that at the next stage that's going to get us that best impact. And there are a number of ways we can invest. I'll give you a couple here today. When you think about the best leaders that you have ever worked with or seen or been associated with, they usually are continuous learners. You know what the test for that is? If you've ever met someone who went, I'm good at this, I don't need to get any better, you know they were miserable to work with or for. So this is really based on the premise that the best leaders are continuous learners. And so we've got to find opportunities for them to not only absorb some new material, but practice it. Because you can send me to a conference, you can send me to a class, even the best classes out there, but I have to be able to apply it because learning happens over time. You don't just hear it and go, waha, right? Well, sometimes we have really big lessons learned that it doesn't take long, but most of the rest of the time, it has to be on an ongoing basis. So let's look today at how to build bench strength. What are some of the things, actions, ideas, right? Programs that we could actually put in place to help leaders grow? I want to start with an idea around competencies. So I have the opportunity every day to work with organizations who say, we want to get better at this. We want good leaders. We want good employees, whatever that is. And I will ask, what do you want them to be good at? What is the actual outcome? What will they be able to do as a result of the training you're developing internally or the training you're partnering with NICC on? If you're not familiar with competency modeling, it may sound complex at first, but a competency is a set of defined behaviors, knowledge, skills, and abilities that's required for effective performance in a particular job. There are lots of different types of competencies. And what I want to be able to do for your organization is to help you pick, which ones are most important. And they're going to vary by role. So are they important for individual performance to get to the overall goals? Is it a layer of employees that we want them all to be able to do this? Or is it for leadership planning? And these are the kinds of qualities we want in our leaders. So let's use that as an example today. If you think about what are the qualities and characteristics, skills, and abilities that you want in a supervisor. Now, I've listed some sample ones here on the screen, and there are a lot of choices to choose from even beyond the screen. But just to use this as a nugget for a moment, maybe your leads, maybe your supervisor, maybe all managers, maybe all quality technicians, like you can do this for any role. I have it positioned around as a leader. You want them good at problem solving, change management, training others. Like there are a lot of things to choose from. I often suggest to a company, pick the first 5. Like you can come up with 14, but what are the 5 core areas you want to make sure all leaders in a formal people leader role work on? It doesn't mean they're great at them. It means that's the 5 core areas we're going to start with. And notice, right, what I said is they're going to work on them. So this now becomes embedded into a job description and into coaching and into performance management, including yearly performance appraisals of these are the core competencies that in this company, we want all leaders to exhibit and be working on. Now, it doesn't have to be a specific title, but this may be all people leaders or project leaders or technical leaders. There's many ways we can look at how we influence within the organization. So point number one, make your business case. What's your why? Number 2, what do you really want your leaders to be able to do? Number 3, let's take a look at actually some of the things then. If we've got our why and we've got those core competencies, what is it going to take? Well, first we've got to know what we want them to do. Emerging leaders really keep work flowing. That's a different skill set than creating stuff, right? So emerging leaders might be your trainer or your lead, right? Or that one closest to individual contributors that may be an individual contributor with some influence or some authority. Because they're really what they're doing is they're taking big picture and breaking it down to here's the next task. We want them to demonstrate initiative and problem solving, to tackle challenges head on, and using tools we have or backup plans. That looks different than an advancing leader. Maybe in that now supervisor or moving into a coordinator or manager role, we need to know where the work comes from and where it goes to. They need to translate big ideas from senior leaders into a game plan in their area. And it may create a new situation where they're now leading leaders. Maybe it's a manager who has a supervisor, and then now we're growing that supervisor to be a better leader. Advancing leaders have to make live adjustments to execute on a larger plan. That's a different skill set. Now, while I may have 4 core competencies, maybe I've got 1 or 2 for emerging, 1 or 2 for advancing, 1 or 2 more for senior leaders. You know, senior leaders, usually within that top layer of the organization, are experts in their field. The CFO, the CEO, maybe director. It could be any of those titles. They're really good in their lane, but they've got to learn how to work across. And we spent a lot of time working on that with companies for NICC that sometimes we've got to help them communicate that bigger picture. They were really good at their lane, but this is a different skill set. They've got to manage relationships with internal and external stakeholders. They've got to understand business across departments and seek others from other areas because that's not their area of expertise. So senior leader is going to have more impact on the overall organization, structural policy changes, and how we build the business. Why mention that today for our short time together? I want you thinking about growing leaders differently for the emerging, the advancing, or the senior. Those are 3 categories, and maybe you only have 2, or maybe you're just focused on one right now, but start somewhere. A couple more tools for our time. Another one to think about that you could choose to do a deeper dive on is, what does it actually take to get you, your team, or across an organization growing? So the 50-30-20 rule I would propose is a way to engage different types of learning. So the research out there provides a number of examples. 50% of the time, I should be doing stretch or challenge assignments. So if not 50% of my job, but if I am wanting to make that next move, I need some challenge assignments. So maybe I get 2 stretch projects this year. And then some of my time I'm statusing or I'm learning or I'm rotating in the organization to see different types of parts of it or develop relationships. And much to my disappointment, and on behalf of NICC, while we believe wholeheartedly in coursework and training, it is 20% of it. Now, what I do love to say is we're only a B student at 80% without coursework and training because we need that connection to other ideas outside of the organization. We might go to a group class where we get to hear from other people in other organizations. There's value there, but it is incomplete if you think you're just going to send a new leader to a class without matching it to other kinds of activities. So that would be something you might want to consider for today as well. My favorite list. So if any of these, you're going to have access to the recording, you can take a picture. I would love to have you share it at an upcoming leadership meeting and go, how do we do this? What I love about this list is these are some things that as a supervisor, if I'm trying to help grow a team member, these are the things I can ask them to do. I could have them start planning something new that they've never done before. I could have them start something from scratch the company has never done before. I could have them fix something that is broken. I could have them improve on something that's pretty good. What would you do next? Like, what's our best option? I could give them an assignment outside of their scope, send them to a different location, because for any of us who've had the opportunity to visit somewhere else, we never come back the same. Maybe I want them shadowing in different positions or departments. I could increase their responsibility in scope, which means complexity, or scale in size. Could have them coordinate or lead various types of projects. What I love about this list is pick one. Like, you don't have to do all of them. But if you're working, so we've talked organizational, this could be me as a supervisor trying to grow you, or this could be you. You could look at this list and say, I've got to set some goals this next year. My manager is asking me to take those next steps. You could pick a couple of these and develop some goals around projects or be open to looking for those kinds of opportunities if you want to step up. By the way, it doesn't have to be just at work. You could volunteer with an organization to work on some of these skills as well. These are skill builders that help us level up in those competencies to take on something new. So really consider how you might take that list within your current role. And if your employer is not ready for you to do that or not giving you opportunities, wow, so many of our communities, our boards, our special events, organizations. If you're looking for anybody, I got a list. But all types of organizations are looking for people to step in to leadership roles to help build those. And that's a huge opportunity within our communities. The last thing I want to just share with you today is how we layer it in. So notice, right? I can know my why, our business goals. I can think about competencies. I can think about types of projects. So I'm now layering in because I mentioned earlier, learning doesn't just happen. It is change in behavior over time. So think about just differences between, you might have supervisor training on how to enter time cards, but leadership training is the how we do it. Consistency is more than content. Very often through NICC, a company I'll be working with says, hey, let's do an 8-hour day. And I'm like, how about 4 2-hour days? 2-hour sessions, because I would rather see a group multiple times over a longer period of time than a one-time shot, because that's not how deeper learning works. Chunking is more important than length. The idea is sometimes it's a 5 or 10-minute video. We're doing more micro learning options where just what's something I can send to your inbox and give you 3 minutes of me talking and challenging you on a concept, as compared to 3 hours doesn't necessarily always do it. Depends. Championing it, meaning I have to have a senior leader who says it's important to do this. And I definitely see a difference within companies where the senior leaders are committed, where they're not. And I always say, start somewhere. Like if your company right now is not in a spot to do that, you can. There's things you can do: reading, watching, listening, looking for that list I just gave you in your next opportunity, or speaking up in a meeting and saying, I'd like to try that. Can I volunteer? That's going to help you take your leading to the next level. One more model I'll share with you today is often how we end up building this in the emerging, advancing, and senior. So maybe my emerging level, 12 months, 6 classes, 3 hours a piece. And then in the off months, maybe they have a one-on-one with somebody else, or they take on an assignment, or they do some on-demand learning. It just gets that consistency over time. Another one, advancing level 2. Now, sometimes these folks are busier, so we might go 6 classes at 3 hours each again. But in the off month, they're doing small group masterminds, and then they're doing on-demand learning. Maybe they're reading something or watching something. But those small group masterminds allows them to meet with other managers to say, oh yeah, I'm running into that too. And senior leaders, right, they're gonna operate differently. So often we'll build in 4 quarterly offsites, and in the off months, in between those quarterly offsites, they get a professional coach, or they might go to professional development conferences. But they need, right, again, our goals may be different based on the competencies we're trying to build. So my hope for you today was that's pretty darn quick, some key visuals to go, I don't know, how would we do that? Whether you're building it internally or you're partnering with us at NICC. One of the key points I would make with that, though, is that there are so many different roads to where you can go. There are so many different options for this. Many times I can know my business why, I can build those competencies, like list them out right now. What are the 5 or 7 core areas you want to grow in? You want your team to grow in, or you want organizational leaders to grow in? Well, they're not all going to get there the same way. One of the things that I'm working on with many of my companies through NICC is kind of like choose your own ending storybooks. Did anyone else grow up with, you got to choose where you went in the book based on decisions you made? We're building systems that go exactly to that, because we know people don't learn the same way. So whether I'm a reader or a watcher or a listener, whether I like something to hold on to or I'm okay with it online, there's so many more options we have. And I don't want to leave this to happenstance, because if you are in a role within your organization to help build leaders, to help grow leaders, that's your future. And if you're not growing them in some capacity, the risk is somebody else will. What would be your next step at the organizational level, the team or department level, or for you? What do you need? And no matter what role you're in, to stretch that learning set of muscles, to see things from different perspectives, and then how you learn best. Name 2 goals this year that you want to work on. While I would love to see it more often than that, if I send you with a to-do list of 20 things after this 30-minute webinar, you're going to go, I'm too busy. I don't have time for that. What I want you to consider is, what's your next move? Remembering that timing is not always the best. Maybe right now is not your time. Maybe later this year is. So understand your limitations. Ask questions of people around you, people you've met. How did you learn that? How did you make that move? Even asking questions of your senior leader. If you're not getting direction, ask them. What do you think are the most important qualities that leaders in this organization should have? I don't like surprises unless they're, bright and shiny in small boxes for my husband, right? So growing leaders, here's what I call it, surprise training. Hey, Celina's here today. Come in. We're going to do some training. Nobody's ready to learn when it's surprise training, even though we've had it planned for months. Be clear about your expectations. So if you're helping mentor someone new, if you're helping somebody step into that next role, be clear about it, be helpful, and extend gratitude. In 2019, I'm actually on a YouTube video is being recorded. And I said in 2019, leaders, I'm concerned about leader fatigue. Y'all look tired. This is a heavy lift. It is in my world. It is in your world. Like, this is hard. By the way, I said that in 2019. It has not gotten any easier. We need in our organizations and in our communities for people to lean in, to step in to leadership roles. And if we don't talk about the opportunities and the growth and what it does for us, people aren't going to want to. And we need that pipeline of people growing and learning so that we stay as strong as possible. And it is my fundamental belief for leaders that no matter what stage we're at, I want you confident. I want you to know what you know, yet humble. I want you to know you have something to offer. Somebody tapped on you and saw potential in you now, or maybe a long time ago, but you also have something to learn. Because if we're not learning, we will not be able to make the adaptations and the shifts we need to in the coming years. So on behalf of NICC, it is my absolute pleasure to bring you some of those ideas today. So pick one, pick something that you're going to take an action on, whether you're here again live with us today, or you're rewatching or watching the video for the first time later. Consider how you make that next step clear, because when the step is clear, we make progress. I'm going to open it up and we're going to take a look to see if there's any questions coming in. If you're here with us live and have something you want to ask. Otherwise, I know Teresa's going to come back on and we're going to make some closing comments too. So I'll watch for any other questions coming in and the poll going up. Teresa, tell us what's left.
Yeah, thank you, Celina. Like Celina said, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat box. And Sarah we will have a poll pop up on your screen. If you could just answer those quick questions for a brief evaluation of today's session, we would appreciate that. I would also just want to remind you, as Celina said throughout, this is just a brief synopsis of what Celina's full session on leadership and growing leadership can be. If you have any desire to bring Celina into your company and want more information, please reach out to me and we can make that happen, or any of my coworkers. And just a heads up, our next webinar will be held on April 14th with Tina Bakehouse on talking about knowing who you are affects how you work, communicate, and lead. So look for those registration links in our Facebook page and LinkedIn page. And it does look like, Celina, we do have one
I saw that just pop up there.
Asking for giving a few examples on how to identify emerging leaders.
Great. I think it goes back to what does a leader look like in your organization? So when you're clear on that, you know what signs you're looking for. So one of the ways, and I'm happy to provide this to anybody who wants it, drop Teresa or Sarah a note and we'll get it to you, is identifying 5 key things they need to do to take that next step. So maybe they need to show initiative. So identifying what behaviors are you looking for from them, because that gives you something to watch for. They know what's expected if they want to take those next steps. And then you are looking for people who take initiative. People who are solving problems, people who are helpful, right? People who may not express interest. Maybe they're a quiet leader and they don't want to volunteer, but you're seeing something in them. but it's much better when we're clear what we're watching for. So while that wasn't included today, I'm happy to provide that supplement to how to share with people. If you want to be a leader, here's some things you need to show us. Great question. All right.
One last call. I'm not seeing any other questions.
It's okay. We'll follow up if we hear from anybody.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for your time today, Celina, and for
My
everybody that
pleasure.
joined us.
Thanks for asking. And
Appreciate
yeah,
having you.